Hello everybody, this is City Scrapper. Thanks so much for joining me on my channel today. Today I am back with another layout for Christy's Beautiful Life 30 Days of Sketches Series 7. Today is day 13 and today we are using a sketch from Sketchabilities and it is by Karin Gerber. For today's sketch I'm using this photo of some turtles. My daughter took us to this museum in Rochester, New York, where she used to go to school, and they had this great little area. It had turtles, and it had quail, it had a chameleon, there were butterflies, and there were also beautiful plants and flowers everywhere. So it was a great place to take pictures. For this layout, I'm using the Pink Paislee Spring Jubilee collection. And I'm not sure what year it was made, but I know that it must be rather old because I got it a couple of years ago at a scrapbooking show from someone who was selling older collections. But I was really attracted to the colors that were in this collection. I love the way they're so bright. And I felt they were a good match for this particular photo. This paper collection was also a great choice for this particular sketch because I found that there were a number of squares that were cut out already and I hadn't used them for whatever project I cut them out for, and the sketch calls for lots of squares, so I used whatever I found, and then I also cut some larger sheets of paper into squares so that I would have all these different squares that would match the sketch. And I'm using this punch to create this notebook edge, and that goes along with the sketch too. There's quite a few of these punched pieces in the sketch. There's a very long piece that goes vertically from the top all the way on the left down to the area where you could see there's all those drips on the sketch. And initially I cut that out and I put that in there, but you'll see later on I trim it down. It just didn't work out for what I had done to the sketch. So I feel like sometimes you have to make modifications when necessary. And I'm switching things up a bit in that big cluster. I wanted there to be a torn edge. I felt like there were enough straight edges, so I flipped those green pieces of paper around and gave it a torn edge. And I'm also including that little tiny piece of yellow paper with a torn edge. I feel like it just mixes up the textures. Now I'm going to work on my background. I'm using my favorite heavy 120-pound smooth white cardstock, and I've already coated it in gesso, and I'm using some sprays. This particular one I'm working with is a Tattered Angels Glimmer Mist, and I'm making some drips down the page. I like these pink drips. If I could go back and do them again, I would not make them the same distance apart. If there are different amounts of space between the drips, I feel like it's a little more interesting. I'm trying to add this other drip over on the left and make it a little bit different, but those three together, it ends up looking just fine, but I always try to think about what I could do to make something better or what I could do the next time. So that's what I would do the next time. I would not make them evenly spaced. Now I'm moving on to some turquoise strips. And I'm again using a Tattered Angel spray for these drips. Sometimes when drying drips, because there's so much liquid on the page, it could cause the drips to split apart or to just kind of do their own thing. But in this case, the drips kind of stayed where they were. So I just try to be careful when using my heat tool on drips. Now I'm adding some Lindy spray. This is a beautiful bright yellow, and drying those up. I keep trying my photo cluster back on this layout. I do it so many times on this particular layout just to see how the mixed media looks with it back on top. And for this layout, I feel that the background, by the time I'm done, it looks like a huge color explosion. But when I put the papers and the photo back on top again, I feel that just enough of the color shows. I love this process of putting the color on the page, so sometimes I feel like I get a little over enthusiastic, but I was happy in the end with how it all turned out. I'm using the same sprays on the top that I used to make the drips on the bottom. I'm using the Lindy's yellow color and the Tattered Angels turquoise and pink colors, and I just love that color combination. I felt that the pink at the top looked a little dull, and I really wanted it to be vibrant, and I wanted to match the drips, so I went in with a darker shade, and I'm spreading that around now, and I'm just going over all the areas where I'd added the other pink color. I don't always show it on the video because otherwise the videos would be extremely long, but I do dry the sprays after each application, and that way the colors don't run together, and then there's more depth of color when you add the wet color to a dry layer rather than mixing two wet layers together. I'm going in now with some splatters. I'm using some watered down white acrylic paint for these splatters, and now I'm using some watered down black acrylic paint, and I'm adding a few splatters of black. I used to really not understand why people added black splatters to such a colorful layout. I now realize there's something about the black that just makes it look complete to my eye anyway, so I do add them, even if it's just a few, to most of my layouts. So here you could see I had a little bit of an accident with the black splatters. I had a big splatter down there on the bottom with the drips, so I'm going in and doing a little bit of damage control there. And in the end, you really don't see any of this at all, so it all worked out. Like many scrapbookers, I've watched a lot of Missy Whidden videos, and she always talks about putting white gesso down. And in the beginning, when I first started doing mixed media, I was always confused about why people would put gesso underneath watercolor sprays, because my experience is that gesso goes on a canvas when you make an acrylic or an oil painting, and that you don't treat the paper for watercolors. And thanks to Missy Whidden, I have developed such an appreciation of having gesso on the paper, because I have very rarely found there to be anything that I couldn't fix. I can't think of an example where I actually had to throw a background away when it was covered in white gesso on the background because there was like a spill or something. It really does help, and in a lot of ways, and one of them is when there's an accident, it seems like it can be fixed, and you can remove things from the background so much more easily than if it was just plain paper. So that's my little advertisement for gesso today. I'm now deciding I'm going to put a little cluster in the corner. It doesn't look very little right now. And I wanted to mention that when I was busy chatting, I added some stamping to the areas of color up on top. And I also mixed together some stencil paste and some modeling paste. And the reason for the stencil paste is so that the modeling paste will be more of a true white, because I feel like it's a little gray when I just use it right out of the container. And I pushed it through a stencil, and I did that on the top, and everything that I did on the top, I did on the bottom. I put down the sprays, I put down the splatters of white and black, I put down the modeling paste, and I did the stamping. So I wanted it to match what I did on the top. And you could see there that I added a doily to the cluster on top. Now I'm adding some splatters. I try when I add the splatters to add color on color, but of course splatters splatter around, so I can't be too particular, but that's my starting point. And I go in with sprays of all three different colors that I used. Usually I add the watercolor splatters when I'm applying the watercolors, but I forgot to do that. So now I'm going back and adding the sprays in all three of the colors that I used for the background. I don't have any embellishments to go with this collection, so I did some fussy cutting. I found a few images that I thought would look pretty on the page. That big long cluster on the bottom, that was fussy cut from some of the pattern papers. And now I'm attaching down that cluster, and I had a really hard time getting the adhesive to stick on the foam. Most days it goes down just fine, but on this particular day I struggled a bit. But in the end, I got enough adhesive down to attach it to the background. I love adding butterflies to layouts in general, and I thought that it was particularly appropriate to put butterflies on this page since we did see a lot of butterflies that day. And I edged them with the black soot Distress Oxide because I want everything to be cohesive. And then I'm also popping them up on a little bit of foam. I really like popping up little elements around the page on the foam, sentiments and little things like such as these. These flowers were also fussy cut from the papers, so I'm just trying to find the places that I think they would look the best. So I decided that those would be the best areas, and now again going in with the Distress Oxide and making everything cohesive. I know that the sketch doesn't have a cluster in the lower right hand corner, but when I looked at this sketch and saw all the writing that was in the corner, I thought that I would like to have something there, and I end up being happy that that's there. I like the way that balances off the layout. It would be fine without it too. I like minimal layouts as well. Sometimes I'm afraid to stray even a little bit from a sketch, so I was happy that I made that decision in this particular case. So now I'm getting everything attached down. I'm just using the ATG adhesive on the flowers and attaching it right down to the layout. And then I kind of peel up the cluster on the bottom because I wanted to make sure that that was edged in the black soot as well. Sometimes I'll skip some of the elements on the page and I won't edge them along with everything else, and then it ends up bothering me. So I made sure that I got everything edged in the black soot. And the little piece of doily there on the bottom, it was kind of meant to make everything cohesive. I have a bit of doily on the top and a bit of doily on the bottom, but in the end you really can't see the doily that's on the bottom, but that's okay. Sometimes you don't know what's going to end up showing on the final layout. I wanted to add a few florals. I didn't want to go crazy, so I just picked out a couple of these very light looking florals, and I'm adding those in 3 different places. I fussy cut out that little half circle, and I feel like that would look nice tucked into the layers around the photo. And then there was a little bird that I fussy cut out as well from the papers, and I thought it was so cute, but I just couldn't find the right spot for it. Right now I'm just sticking it right in the very corner, and then I ended up taking it off, but it does end up finding a spot. Now I'm adding one of my favorite touches, which is adding photo corners. So I'm punching out some photo corners from some of that pretty coral colored paper. I only have to add the photo corners in 3 different corners because the butterfly is covering one of the corners. And I use some of the black soot on those as well. And then I'm just adding some ATG adhesive to attach those down. I decided to add just a little bit more foliage to that little corner right there. It just seemed like there was kind of an empty spot right there, and I glued all of those down. Now I was thinking that this layout really could use some flowers. I found these beautiful bright yellow Petaloo flowers, and I'm mixing them together with this set of Prima flowers that I had in my stash. And I'm not going to go super crazy with the flowers. I just wanted to add a little touch of flowers to the layout. And so I had to kind of relocate that butterfly because I wanted the flowers to be close to the picture. And now I'm going in with heavy duty gel medium and I'm attaching the flowers down. And for the title, I couldn't think what I wanted to call this. And when I came across this perfectly colored yellow title that said cute, I thought this is a great title because the turtles were truly extremely cute. Now I'm just arranging everything around and adding a couple of little yellow enamel dots to each of the photo corners. And that completes the layout. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I hope if you liked the video, you'll give it a thumbs up. Please check out the description box where you can find links to all of the other scrapbookers who are making videos for this challenge. I hope that you enjoyed watching the video, and I hope that you have a fantastic day, and I will see you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.